Hey guys, today's video will definitely be a longer one, so if this one does not apply to you, please stick around. I will have an apartment tour coming out soon. Also, throughout the video, I will have timestamps based on the different topics I will be talking about, which are going to be research, cost, documentation, plane tickets and airlines, supplies, and a step-by-step of where I started and how I got all the way here from the arrival home with my dog Nara. Just as a little background, I came to South Korea about a month ago. I am teaching English out here. This is Nara. She is a 16-pound Shiba. She's also very, very lazy Shiba. You don't see those quite often, but she is a cute little sack of potatoes. And I love her oh so much. And she flew in cargo with me from LAX all the way to Incheon Airport. So today we'll be going over that. Without further ado, let's get started. All right, starting off on the research topic, there is a lot of information out there on how to get your dog from point A to point B. It is very difficult just because you do have to focus on your country of export versus your country of import. So for me, that was from the US to Korea. The guidelines that it took for me to get from US to Korea do not apply on the same way back. So just make sure and apply that correctly. So there were 4 websites that specifically helped me a lot throughout my process that I always referred to. So the first one is going to be pettravelsstore.com. Pettravelsstore.com sent me all the documents and the instructions that I needed, and it was only $20. What's amazing about them is you can also email them to see if there's any updates on the documents, and they will tell you yes or no. And they also give you extra paperwork that you may or may not need, but it's always helpful to have more than less. So the second one is going to be actually a Facebook group, and this Facebook group is called Flying Pets Korea Free Advice. I believe the owner of the group, he is a transporter for dogs and cats and animals to Korea. And so he has all the information on there, also has step-by-step guides, a lot of helpful advice. And also what's great about the page is if you're ever unsure about something, your paperwork is missing some information, or you're not sure if your crate is the right size, you can post on there and ask. And it is very helpful to have a group like that that you can go to in order to answer all your questions. So moving on to the third website, which would seem like the number one, but it is the aphis.usda.gov website, and this is the official guidelines for your country of import. The requirements for bringing in your dog would be their microchip number, ISO standards, which is 15 numbers. You can ask your vet about it. They also needed to have a FAVN test done, and they also needed to have a rabies certificate. Also, when you're flying, they need to have a health certificate. That is where I found the guidelines. It is aphis.usda.gov. But the last website that was extremely helpful to me was koreanair.com. So every airline is different based on how they take pets, what is required, their guidelines for taking dogs in cargo and on board. Because I decided to fly with Korean Air, that is where I went in order to find what I needed to about Nara and her crate dimensions and what she was allowed to do, pricing and all of that. So those were my 4 websites that helped me the most for getting here. There is a lot of information out there. Make sure you don't overwhelm yourself because it can get very stressful. I did that many times, but in order to break it down for you, where I got my documents, where I got my advice, where I found my regulations and guidelines, and where I found my specific airlines restrictions, guidelines, pricing, and all that. So yeah, that is pretty much all you need summed up. So you can mix and match these however you find based on your country of import or export, but this is what helped me the most. So next we'll be moving on to the cost. Alrighty, so everybody wants to know this number. It was approximately $1,300 for me to bring Nara over here. So the breakdown of the cost going from most expensive to least expensive: $400 for her blood titer test or her FAVN test, $300 for the flight ticket, then we have $250 for the health certificate, $121 for the USDA certification, $77 for her crate, $50 for per rabies shot, and then $50 for supplies that I brought, $30 for her mat inside her crate, and then $8 for the external water bottle that I attached to her crate. The flight ticket, the health certificate, and the USDA certification, which are some of the top 3 expenses, all come within the week that you are flying. So make sure you also have your savings okay and you are prepared for those costs. I did inquire with a few shipping companies asking their pricing, and they did all mention approximately $2,000 and above. If you want to save some money, it is cheaper flying with your dog directly rather than shipping them. So that is why I am here making this video, to help you guys through that process. So documents, this was the very stressful part, but once you get through it, it feels weird because you're done and it feels like a lot more than it should be. But anyways, the first document you are going to need in order to get specifically from the US to South Korea is going to be your FAVN test. And this is a test that measures the antibodies within the dog, making sure that they are rabies free. So this will be done right after they get a rabies shot, and it can take a couple weeks in order to get back. So make sure you get it done ahead of time. Also, you need to make sure that this document is sent directly to you. You need to have the original copy when you are coming to South Korea. It will have a sticker on it. But that is what you need. That is the first document you need. So the second document you will be needing is a rabies certificate, and this is just to verify that your dog has gotten their rabies shot, signed in blue. The blue ink is just so that it is certified as an original document rather than being any type of digital signature or anything like that. Third document you are going to need is a health certificate. You get this one done 10 days before your flight. This one does have to be done by a USDA accredited veterinarian. I mentioned earlier the aphis.usda.gov site, and this is where you can find accredited veterinarians. I will also go over how I found my accredited veterinarian in the step-by-step process. And lastly, the last document you need is going to be your USDA certification. So after you have your FAVN test, after you have your rabies certificate, and after you finally, within that 10 days, have your health certificate, then you're gonna go and get this USDA certified. What I did was I actually went to LA and I dropped off my documents in the morning, and by 4 p.m. that day, they had them all done and all certified. If something is wrong, then they will tell you that day and give back your paperwork. You have to go get it fixed and go get it recertified. So this is not a specific document, but you do need those 3 documents USDA certified. So once you have all those done, then you officially have your documents in order to come over to South Korea. An additional document that I got from my vet that was included in my pet travel store documents was the airline veterinary form. I handed actually all the documents over to my vet. It included stuff like, a microchip certificate. It also included a vaccination list that my vet could have filled out. But the only additional form that they did fill out for me was the airline veterinary form. And that is just telling my airline specifically, hey, this dog is okay to fly. So it will depend on what documents you receive from pettravelstore.com or any other websites, say the APHIS website, and you can hand those directly over to your vet and they will know what to do with them. That is a wrap up of all the documents that I needed/took with me. I had all the original documents with me at all times while I was in the airport, and I attached copies to her crate up there. That is Nara's crate. Moving on, let's talk about the plane ticket and airline. This was one of the topics when I was doing my research that I felt like not a lot of people had talked about, and it was really concerning. I was really curious to know which airlines people took, how safe certain airlines were, if in cargo or on board was better, and how you went about reserving your flight. So for me, I ended up debating between 2 airlines, and I ultimately went with Korean Airlines based off of my research. I went and searched up both airlines, saw how pet friendly they were, and that's how I made my decision. Korean Airlines was great with Nara. They have a pet confirmation once you make your reservation, and they're very hands-on with you at the airport. So that is ultimately why I went with them. A little more breakdown of that, how I did it. I ended up calling Korean Airlines. You do have to call, you cannot make a pet reservation online. And you tell them the age, gender, name, weight, all that good stuff. And then you also tell them whether they are going on board or in cargo. Lastly, tell them the weight and size of your crate. So you do have to know that information before you are going to call and reserve your flight. But I did not actually have my crate at the time, but I knew which crate I was going to purchase. You don't need to actually have your crate in hand, but if you want to reserve your flight early and say, oh, like, I don't know if they're going to sell out, just know which crate you are going to buy. You will be able to find your airline's restrictions for onboard and in cargo on their website. As I mentioned before, koreanairlines.com is where I found my guidelines for all of that. Also, they gave me a confirmation email once my pet reservation was confirmed. And lastly, you do pay at the airport. So you do not pay in advance the way you do for your own personal flight. I really wanted Nara to fly on board with me because I felt like it was safer that way. I felt like if I could see her, she wouldn't be as nervous or as scared, but ultimately I was happy that she went in cargo. It is a darker space for them. It is enclosed. It's a lot quieter than on board, and they have a place to sleep. She also had a bigger crate versus on board. She would have to be stuffed under the seat, which, you know, most dogs, you can't take your dog out of their soft crate on board, so they can see you, but there's the potential that they're gonna cry, that they're nervous and anxious and all that. So ultimately I was happy with my decision that she went in cargo. Also, she was a little too chubby to go on board anyways, which is why I did take her in cargo. But that was some additional information that I found out through the Facebook group sites. Once again, they were very helpful. Some airlines can also have a time restriction on how long your pet can be on a flight. So some airlines, that is a max 12-hour flight. My flight was 12 hours and 20 minutes. So Korean Airlines actually does not have a restriction for how long your dog can fly, but other airlines will. So please check on your specific airline's website to see if they have that time restriction. That is all the preparation for the airline and how I went about getting my plane ticket for me and Nara. Moving on to our next topic, which is going to be supplies. Alrighty, so supplies. And I got all of my supplies on Amazon. I will be linking them down below, as well as all the websites I mentioned earlier. How do you know what size crate to buy for your dog? Most regulations require you have 3 to 4 inches at the top of the dog's head. Since my dog is a Shiba and she has pointed ears, it has to be 3 to 4 inches above those pointed ears. The dog also has to be able to lay down comfortably, stand up, sit down, turn around. That is the general guidelines. I did sit there with a measuring tape and measure, you know, all the lengths and everything like that. You really don't have to go that extensively. At the airport, they will not do that. They're just going to make sure your dog has enough room to be comfortable during the flight. I even downgraded a size, and I could have even downgraded one more size because the crate I got was a little too big, but that is okay. She had more space. Just as long as it is not too small for your dog, you should be fine. If you want more help on guidelines and sizing your dog, you can Google it, or once again, go on the Facebook group. They will have a lot of information there. My crate was a $77 crate, and it met all the TSA standard guidelines, which was great. It also included metal hardware, which is necessary for flying. You cannot use plastic hardware. It also included some live animal stickers, and it also included some dog bowls, and lastly some snap-on wheels, which was my favorite part. I knew I was going to be traveling alone, and I wanted to be able to push Nara around if I could not carry her. So that was why I went with my specific crate. Also, it was under $100, which most other crates were well over $100. So I thought that this crate was such a bargain. Since the crate included so much additional accessories, the only additional items I bought was an $8 external, what I call a hamster water bottle, which is what you attach to the outside of it. I did attach it with a zip tie because it is safer that way rather than just the little metal extender that they include. And also I bought her a kitchen mat, which was approximately $30. It was one of the Tempur-Pedic kind of squishy foam mats that was non-slip. The reason I did not include a regular bed in there was because I originally bought her a regular bed, and I did some more research once again on the Facebook group site, and they mentioned not to include any type of bedding that was going to be bulky or that would soak in the pee. They were most likely going to urinate during the flight, so you wanted them to be as comfortable as possible. So that meant including a thin mat in there so that if they did urinate, it would go down, drain to the sides of the crate, which it does have in there, or it would go to their pee pad, which they most likely will smush in the back of their crate. And I'm very glad I did this. The original first bed that I bought had filled up the entire crate, and if she had urinated, which she did, it would have just soaked in there and she would have been wet the whole flight. So luckily, I'm very glad that I went with that $30 thin mat. And yeah, I did buy some extra supplies for when we came here, since I knew we were going to be coming into quarantine, which was going to be extra food, reusable pee pads. I bought her a new harness, and I brought her toys. So that was about all the supplies that I bought. So I had about a 3-month prep in order to get Nara over here, and starting from day one, I found my local USDA accredited veterinarian. How I did that was I actually called my regular local vet and I said, hey, do you guys do export of dogs here to different countries? They said, no, we do not. And they led me a couple different places. Those places actually weren't taking clients at the time because of COVID, but I still got more directions and numbers to call, and ultimately found an accredited veterinarian only 10 minutes up the street from me. So that is one way you can find your local USDA accredited veterinarian. You can just ask if they export dogs to different countries, or you can once again go on the aphis.usda.gov site. They also have a little section at the bottom where you can find different USDA accredited veterinarians in your area. Step 2 is get your rabies shots done and get your FAVN tests done. Once you get this done, have them send those FAVN results back to you directly so that you have an original copy and that it is not waiting at your veterinarian or anything goes wrong. And make sure that those results are correct. Oopsie, my SD card got filled. Anyways, so after you get your rabies shots done and you have your FAVN test done, next step will be the rabies certificate. Since you already have your rabies shots done, you should be able to get your rabies certificate. You can get this done with your other documents, say your health certificate and all that, if you want it all done together, or you can get it early just to have it as an early precaution. So totally up to you. I actually already had one version and then they updated it once I got my health certificate. So there's 2 ways you can do that. Just make sure you get it done and signed in blue. Step number 4 is going to be scheduling your flight. You have to call and get a confirmation with your airline about this. Remember, once you are making your flight, you do have to have your crate dimensions already in hand. Step number 5 is going to be preparing your dog for flight. So this is the awkward waiting period where you say, oh my God, I have half of my documents done and half of them I need to do 10 days before my flight. And it's the most nerve-wracking period, but I promise it will be okay. So this is where you order your supplies, you start crate training your dog, get them very comfortable with being in the crate for extended periods of time. If you do get that external water bottle, make sure they know how to use it so they don't dehydrate themselves during the flight. So that is step 5. So step number 6 is actually going to be the 10 days before your flight, getting your health certificate. Once you get your health certificate, then you go and drop off your FAVN, you go and drop off your health certificate, you go and drop off your rabies certificate, and any other documents, just include them just in case. And go and get those USDA certified. So that is going to be step number 6. Step number 7 is your day of flight. What I did is I took off Nara's collar and her harness and I put those on me in my carry-on. You don't want any extra stuff being in her crate. That is going to be a hazard to the dog while they're flying. You don't know how your dog is going to react the first time flying. They could be very anxious, moving around a lot. They could just sleep the whole time, but you never know. So you just want to be prepared for all situations. So all I included in Nara's crate was little kitchen mat, which was her bedding technically, a pee pad on top of that, 2 food bowls inside that had food in them, and I also froze her water bottle the night before so she had cold water. That was all I included within her crate, just so there were no hazards in there. She was comfortable, she had enough space. If she peed, it wasn't going to get on anything. Also, for the external preparation of the crate, as I mentioned, the metal hardware has to be on there. I brought zip ties with me to the airport so they could zip tie the whole crate. They actually had zip ties already for me that were a little bit stronger, a little bit more durable. So bring them just in case. It's always good to have extras. I did make copies of her documents and attach those to her crate in just a clear document folder. Then off we were. I went to the airport and they zip tied her. We actually got there approximately 2 hours early so I could take her outside to go pee. She was a little too anxious since it was a new environment, so she did not pee outside of the airport, but she did go on the flight. She didn't poop or anything like that. It's a new change for them, so do give your dog some time. Try and get there as early as possible so that you can prepare for all instances and they can take your dog in advance and get your dog prepared for the flight. So last step was arriving. While I was on the flight, I was extremely nervous. I wanted to know how Nara felt, especially during turbulence. It was really scary, but once we got there, I went through all the COVID guidelines in South Korea, which you have to do. There's some extra steps you have to go through at the airport. And finally, once I was released and I went down to baggage claim, they actually had Nara already there next to my baggage claim with someone there with her. They helped me over to someone who actually checked her paperwork right there on the spot, even though it was approximately 5:30 in the morning. They gave me some clippers and they unclipped her for me and we were off. So it was just as simple as and easy as that. It seems so long. I really wanted to make this video just because this was a crazy process. So this is a whole summary of that and a whole in-depth guideline as well. So I hope you guys learned something today. If not, that's okay. Please don't stress about it. I know it is a very stressful process. If you have any questions for me, please leave them in the comments down below. I will get back to them and I would love to help anybody that is also going through this. Now here we are and I am so glad that I have my dog with me. All of that stress was worth it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and I hope you guys are doing okay in COVID. Have a great day, everybody, and be on the lookout for my apartment tour, which is going to be coming out soon. Thanks, everybody.